Hello TB Okutos family, welcome back to TB Okutos channel. Thank you for liking, for subscribing and for staying true to the channel. God bless you. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to make this two-piece dress, the top and the skirt, an asymmetrical skirt actually. It's very easy and simple to do. So without further ado, let's get into the video. I'm going to be using these two sample materials to make the skirt and the top. The black is going to be for the skirt, while the yellow with the dominant color is going to be for the top. I'm going to mix a little bit of yellow with the skirt material. These are the two materials I'm going to be using, and I'm going to use freehand for the skirt. I will be showing us the process towards the end of the video. The very first thing, I have my basic bodies from the shoulder line to the hip line. I have all that I needed on the basic bodies. I also have the back bodies and I have my markers. I'm just going to proceed to manipulating my basic bodies into the top style that I want. The very first thing I'm going to do is to eliminate the dart. I don't want that to be there. I just want it to be a fitted top, smart looking top. So I went ahead to measure what my dart is. My dart is 4 centimeters. 4 centimeters in inches is 1.5 inches thereabouts. So I'm going to eliminate it at both sides of the top, and before constructing the elimination line, I just went ahead to confirm if I have the exact waist circumference. Once I am sure of this, I went ahead to connect from my waist to the armhole or the underarm point, and I will also use my curve ruler to connect from the waist back to the hip line. This is the very first step in this process. Then I went ahead to clean off the dart space in between the darts, leaving the dart line because I'm going to be using it as a guideline. The next one is to walk around the neckline. I want an asymmetrical or asymmetrical neckline, and that was why I made the bodies to be a full scale front. The very first thing I did here was to go inward by 2 to 3 centimeters, which is more or less of an inch, and I drew down my line to my neck depth. Did the same thing at the other side. I transferred the same measurement to the other side of my neck and also connected it in the form of the neckline that I want. With this, I have my asymmetrical neckline, and I went ahead to clean off the basic neckline on the pattern. After doing this, the next thing I went ahead to do was to come upward from my hip line by 14 to 15 centimeters, because this is a top, right, and I want it to be short. I don't want it to be my exact hip length. I want it to be at my upper hip, so I went up by some centimeters. You can do 4 to 5 inches depending on what you like. Once I was done with this, I extended my dart line downward to guide me into marking a line, and I went outward towards the center front by some centimeters, 5 to 6 centimeters. This is 2 inches thereabout, and I extended the line like so. What I'm going to do is to connect this line to one side of my pattern top length, just like the way you see me do. What I did next was to wipe off the line around my top length, because I only needed the edges at both sides of the top to connect what I just connected earlier. And the next thing I'm going to do is to highlight my waistline, because every extension below the waistline is coming back to the waistline, and that was why I toned down the top length, because it's going to guide me at both sides of my top length. And the next thing I did was just to use freestyling to get the other part of the curveness of the other side of my top length, because it's also going to be, aside from the asymmetrical neckline, it's also going to be an asymmetrical top. So what I'm just doing now is just using my hand to get a perfect or my desired cuff line that I want for this other side, the left side of the top. Once I've gotten the shape I wanted, I just went ahead to use my marker to bolding it for us to see clearly. So I'm okay with the styling of the top line. I'll just go ahead to do some necessary things I also want to do. So I'm okay with what I just did. The next thing I'm going to be doing is just to highlight the other parts of the bodies with the black marker for us to see it clearly. So I'm done highlighting, and the next thing I want a collar at that very side. What I'm doing presently is to get the shape of my collar. So your collar can be any shape, any style that you want. This is what I want. I just went outward from my shoulder line by some centimeters, like 7 to 8 centimeters, which should be there about maybe 3 to 3.5 inches. Extended it downward and connect to my neck depth. That is just what I did around that very area. So I'm done drafting the color, and this is what I have. I will be tracing it out later on another pattern paper, but for now I'm going to leave it. I'm thinking of adding buttons to this lower part. I'm not so sure I'll be adding, but I just feel like putting it on the pattern to see if it's going to be very nice. The next thing I'm going to do is to work on the back pattern, just like I did for the front piece. I'm going to be eliminating my waist dart at the back pattern also. And after eliminating it, I went up by the desired length I did for the side front, and the center back is going to be the normal top length, not as long as the way I designed the front piece. I'm going to make it in form of a round or an oval M line with my curve ruler. So I'm trying to get the perfect shape I want for the curveness. So once I've gotten the shape I wanted, I went in with my marker to mark it out, and this is what I have. Clean off my dart line and use my marker to reconstruct the pattern lines for us to see it clearly. The next thing I did was to go inward at the center back neckline, just to have a little more depth of my neck. You can do 1 inch, you can do 0.5 inches, you can do 2 inches. This is your preference. This is the depth of the neck I wanted, and that was what I did. And I just went ahead to add the seam allowance on the back pattern, since I have enough space on my pattern paper, instead of cutting it off. Once I was done adding my seam allowances, I noted it on the pattern just for reference purpose, and I went ahead to cut out my back piece. Coming back to the front piece, what I'm going to do is to trace out the collar part of the dress, because I'm going to be sewing this separately and I need to trace it out. And I went ahead to label it, and also went ahead to trace out the curved side of my top, because I need to trace it out. Since it's a full top, it is intersecting with the other side of the top, so I need to trace out one side of the lower part of the top, and I decided to pick the curve area of the top. You can see it's the same thing that I have after tracing it out. What I just did was to go ahead to label it to know which side is which. What I'm going to do next is to cut out my pattern. You can see there was a mistake there. I had to relabel it in order not to make mistake, especially if you don't have enough fabric. You need to be careful and watch out for all these important things. I went ahead to cut out my pattern. After cutting, this is what I have, and this is what I'm going to be cutting on my fabric. I've added seam allowances to my back pattern, and I'll be adding seam allowance to the front pattern on the fabric. What I'm going to do next is to fold my fabric into two and cut out my back piece. For the front piece, my fabric is going to be faced up, and place my pattern on the fabric, pin it down carefully, add my seam allowances round the bodies, and then cut off. I'm going to do the same thing for the lower part of the top. The next thing I'll be cutting is the lower part of the outfit, which is the skirt. The skirt is going to be a circle skirt, so I'm cutting on bias. The very first thing I did was to fold the fabric into two on bias, divided my waist circumference into 4 plus seam allowances. With this, I've gotten my skirt radius by just dividing my skirt waist circumference into 4 plus the seam allowance I needed for the skirt, and place that measurement vertically to get 1/4 or 1/4 of my skirt waist circumference. The next thing I did was to mark the radius length. The radius length is the skirt length plus the radius. Mark this length round in a circle form on my fabric piece, like so. Once I'm done marking it, go ahead to cut out this piece. I'm going to place this first piece on the second piece that I'm going to be cutting out to give me a full circle skirt or a somewhat circle skirt. Now I have my skirt piece. I'm just going to be cutting out my waistline. My circle skirt is ready to be sewn, but I want to mix a little bit of styling on the skirt. I don't just want that fabric to be the only fabric on the front part of my skirt. So I went ahead to shape the front piece of my skirt to have a cutout in order to sew in another fabric into this particular area. So I'm going to be placing the cutout piece from the front skirt on the second piece of my fabric and just try to give it volume and add a little bit of length to the material, because I want it to have like a bouncy or drapey effect at that particular place where I'll be joining this other piece into the front part of my skirt. So this is how I'm going to be sewing it into the front piece of my skirt to just give it that effect, that asymmetrical or asymmetrical effect. I went ahead to cut my collar and I have all the parts needed. I have my back bodice, my front bodice, and my skirt piece to be sewn. The very first thing I'm going to do is to go ahead to sew the lower part of the bodice and the collar to give me a whole piece. This is what I have after sewing the collar piece and the lower part of my front top. Once I'm done sewing this, I will go ahead to join the lower part of the front piece to the upper part of the front piece, just like the way you are seeing me do in this video. I'm going to be joining it at the waistline. Then I will go ahead to sew in my collar along the neckline to give me what you are looking at presently on the screen. I've gone ahead to sew my front piece is complete. The next thing I'll be joining with my front piece is the back piece, but first I'm going to be using facing along the neckline of the back piece. Once I'm done sewing in my facing, I will go ahead to join my front piece and my back piece at the shoulder area. I'm going to sew the shoulder together, the front shoulder and the back shoulder. This is what I have after sewing the front and back shoulder together. And what I'll be fixing next is my sleeve. I just did a short, basic, simple sleeve. So I'm going to sew in my sleeve along this area. But first, what I'm going to do is to pin my sleeve, to align my sleeve into the armhole of my bodice, both the front and the back bodice. I'll sew in my sleeve, then go ahead to sew both side front and side back piece together. Here I'm done sewing the front and the side back together. I've also gone on my serger to secure the edges of my fabric to make it neat and nice, and I went ahead to just add this paparazzi into the outfit just to give it like a form of ready to wear look. In finishing up with the top, I'm going to go ahead to fixing my invisible zip at the center back of my top where zips sit. And the final thing to sew is the skirt. For the skirt, I'm going to be sewing in the cut out piece at the front area round the curve nest like so. Then once I'm done sewing in that part, I'm going to place my front skirt piece and my back skirt piece right side facing each other. I'll go ahead to sew the side of both skirts, leaving the area where my zip is going to be at the side. With the skirt piece sewn together, I'm done making the two-piece outfit, and this is the result. I love the fact that the collar sits well, even the long two-piece rope sat well at the shoulder area, the asymmetrical lower part of the top, the skirt itself, the bounciness of the skirt. I never knew the method of cutting is going to give me this drapey effect or this bouncy effect around the skirt area, maybe because it is a light cotton material and it came out so nice and beautiful. Thank you so much for watching this video to the end. God bless you. Were you able to learn one or two things from this video? Please let me know in the comment section. I will be reading the comments. Please, if you are seeing my channel for the very first time or watching my video for the very first time, please join the family by clicking the subscription button. Click subscribe, and I still remain your girl T Bell. Till next time, bye bye.